It's been nearly 3 decades since the world was shaken by one of America's most haunting mysteries, the tragic death of 6-year-old beauty queen JonBenet Ramsey. Found lifeless in the basement of her family's Boulder, Colorado home on Christmas morning in 1996, her story captured headlines across the globe and has never truly faded from public memory. For years, speculation, rumors, and accusations surrounded the Ramsey family, especially her parents, John and Patsy. But through it all, her father, John Ramsey, remained heartbreakingly silent. Now, after 28 long years, John has finally spoken, and what he revealed left the world absolutely stunned. For the first time, he opened up about the grief, the guilt, and the crushing weight of living under suspicion for nearly 3 decades. His words weren't meant to defend. They were meant to heal, to finally reveal what he's carried in silence for half his life. The truth, as John tells it, isn't what the public imagined. What he exposed in his emotional confession casts new light on that cold December morning and the years that followed, years filled with media frenzy, shattered trust, and unanswered questions. For so long, people thought they knew what happened inside the Ramsey home. But John's recent statements changed everything. His raw and painful honesty tore open old wounds and reignited the debate that had long divided the nation. What made him finally speak after all this time? And what new truth could possibly explain the most tragic mystery of the 1990s? This is the shocking story of John Ramsey's long-awaited confession, and the heartbreaking truth that's left the world speechless. For nearly 3 decades, John Ramsey has lived in the shadow of unthinkable tragedy. The loss of his daughter, JonBenet, and the cloud of suspicion that followed him for years. To understand the weight of his recent confession, we must go back to that fateful morning on December 26, 1996, when his world shattered forever. It was supposed to be a quiet morning after Christmas in Boulder, Colorado. The Ramseys had celebrated the night before with laughter, gifts, and the joy of the holiday season. But at 5:52 a.m., everything changed. Patsy Ramsey, John's wife, dialed 911 in a panic, reporting that their daughter was missing. A ransom note demanding $118,000, a strangely specific amount matching John's work bonus, was found on the staircase. Police arrived quickly, but from that moment on, the case spiraled into chaos. The home wasn't secured. Friends and neighbors walked through the house, and crucial evidence was compromised. Then, just hours later, John made the discovery that would haunt him forever. In a small storage room in the basement, he found JonBenet's lifeless body wrapped in a white blanket. The beauty queen who had captured America's heart was gone. From that day forward, grief became John's constant companion. But heartbreak soon turned into horror when the investigation took an unexpected turn toward him and his wife. Despite claiming innocence, the couple found themselves under relentless scrutiny. Every interview, every photo, every word was dissected by tabloids and television shows. John later described those early months as a nightmare that never ended. Instead of being comforted, he and Patsy were treated like suspects in their daughter's murder. Theories multiplied. Some claimed it was a kidnapping gone wrong, others believed it was a cover-up within the family. Even when DNA evidence later pointed away from them, the shadow of doubt refused to fade. John often stayed silent through the years, refusing to engage with the endless cycle of speculation. But in his new statement, he finally revealed what those years of silence cost him. "People think I stayed quiet because I had something to hide," he said softly. "But the truth is I stayed quiet because I couldn't bear to relive it." Every interview felt like losing her all over again. He described the unbearable guilt of being unable to protect JonBenet, not from her killer and not from the public's judgment. The tragedy destroyed everything he knew. His wife Patsy passed away in 2006 from ovarian cancer, never living to see her name fully cleared. John admitted that losing both of them, his daughter and his wife, broke something in him that could never be repaired. But after years of silence, he decided it was finally time to speak. Not to clear his name, but to fight for JonBenet's. He revealed that new advancements in DNA technology could finally lead to the truth. He shared that, for years, he had begged authorities to retest the remaining evidence using modern methods, only to be ignored. "All I've ever wanted is justice for my daughter," he said. "I don't care what people think of me. I just want them to find who did this." His voice trembled as he admitted how deeply the case scarred him. "Every Christmas, every birthday, every quiet night, I still see her face," he said. "And I still ask myself, what did I miss? What could I have done?" For the first time, the world saw not a suspect or a media headline, but a father consumed by grief and regret. And his words made one thing painfully clear. The JonBenet Ramsey case wasn't just a mystery. It was a wound that never truly healed. After nearly 3 decades of silence, John Ramsey's voice trembled as he sat before the cameras, his eyes tired but determined. This wasn't another press interview, he clarified. It was his final plea for truth. He wanted to put an end to the decades of speculation that had turned his family's grief into a media circus. John began by addressing the rumors that had haunted him for years. "People believed I was hiding something," he said, his tone heavy with exhaustion. "But I wasn't hiding. I was surviving." He described how, after the tragedy, the Ramsey family's lives unraveled under the weight of false accusations. Strangers harassed them in public, reporters camped outside their home, and friends quietly distanced themselves. What most people never saw, he explained, was the silent suffering behind closed doors. Patsy, once a vibrant woman full of Southern charm, became a shell of herself. Every headline calling her a killer mom chipped away at her spirit. John recalled finding her crying late at night, clutching JonBenet's photo, whispering prayers for forgiveness for something she didn't do. "They killed her twice," John said bitterly, "once with lies and once with cancer." As the years passed, John became obsessed with finding answers. He hired private investigators, reviewed case files, and even reached out to retired detectives who believed the case had been mishandled from the start. What he uncovered only deepened his frustration. Evidence was lost, photographs were mislabeled, and critical leads were ignored. One former investigator told him bluntly, "If this case had been handled properly from day one, we'd know the truth by now." John's recent statement revealed something even more shocking. He believes the real killer might still be alive, and possibly known to local authorities. He didn't name names, but he claimed that several pieces of evidence, including unidentified male DNA found on JonBenet's clothing, were never matched against updated criminal databases. "It's like they didn't want to know," he said quietly. For years, police focused their attention on the Ramsey family, while other potential suspects slipped away unnoticed. There was a mysterious neighbor seen near the house that night, a former housekeeper who disappeared shortly after the murder, and even strange phone calls John received in the days leading up to Christmas, all dismissed as coincidence. Too many things didn't add up, John insisted. He went on to explain that what kept him going wasn't anger, it was love. "I promised JonBenet I would never stop," he said, his voice breaking. "I can't bring her back, but I can make sure the world never forgets her truth." John also revealed how deeply the tragedy affected his surviving children. Burke, JonBenet's older brother, was only 9 years old at the time. The media frenzy around the case followed him throughout his life, making it nearly impossible for him to live normally. "He lost his sister, his childhood, and his privacy all at once," John said. As the cameras rolled, John's expression shifted from pain to resolve. He announced that he had formally petitioned for independent DNA testing using modern forensic methods. "We have the technology now that we didn't have in 1996, he said. "If they won't do it, I will." He concluded his statement with words that silenced the room. "People always ask me if I believe we'll ever know who killed JonBenet. My answer is yes. But justice doesn't come from revenge. It comes from truth. And I'll keep searching for that truth until my last breath." With that, John Ramsey stood up and walked away. No press agents, no lawyers, no entourage. Just a grieving father still haunted by the question that has lingered for 28 years. Who killed JonBenet Ramsey? And for the first time in decades, the world finally saw him not as a suspect, but as a man begging for closure, and the truth that's been buried for far too long. The world sat in stunned silence after John Ramsey's emotional confession. For years, the JonBenet Ramsey case had been shrouded in mystery, lies, and public obsession. But this time, John's voice carried a different tone, one of finality, as though he had finally made peace with the ghosts that had followed him for nearly 3 decades. Behind his calm demeanor, though, was a storm of frustration over how the investigation had gone so wrong. In 1996, when 6-year-old JonBenet was found lifeless in the basement of the family's Boulder home, the police had made critical mistakes from the very beginning. The crime scene had been contaminated. Neighbors and friends were allowed to roam freely inside before the area was secured. Evidence that could have led to the real killer was either mishandled or lost entirely. John explained in his statement that he had pleaded with authorities to bring in outside experts, but the Boulder Police Department insisted on keeping control. They were more interested in proving their theory than finding the truth, he said. That theory, of course, was that someone inside the Ramsey household, perhaps even Patsy or John himself, was responsible. The intense public scrutiny that followed was unbearable. Talk shows, tabloids, and late-night hosts all had their versions of what happened. We were tried by the public before the truth ever had a chance, John recalled painfully. And no matter what evidence surfaced later, the damage had already been done. Even when new DNA evidence appeared years later, evidence that didn't match anyone in the Ramsey family, the stain of suspicion never truly faded. It was like we were living in a nightmare that refused to end, John said. As John grew older, the need to clear his family's name became his life's mission. He met with forensic experts, cold case analysts, and even former FBI agents. Many agreed that the original investigation had been mishandled. A few went as far as to suggest that the case had been sabotaged from within. He mentioned a chilling detail that has rarely been discussed publicly, a strange, half-erased footprint found near the basement window, too large to be a child's, yet not matching anyone in the Ramsey household. John believes it belonged to the real intruder. It was there all along, he said, but they didn't want to see it. Adding to the mystery were the reports of an open basement window and a suitcase found positioned beneath it, almost as if someone had used it to climb out. Who leaves a ransom note and then escapes without taking anything? John asked. This wasn't a kidnapping gone wrong. This was personal. Over the years, several suspects had emerged, from former house staff to local drifters, yet none were ever charged. And as time passed, many leads grew cold. Some suspects died, others disappeared, and the evidence that might have tied them to the crime was either lost or locked away. In his recent address, John hinted that he believes there are people who still know more than they're saying. Someone out there remembers something, he said. Someone saw or heard something that night and decided it wasn't their problem, but it was. He also revealed that he's been working with independent crime labs to retest every piece of physical evidence, fibers, hair, and especially the ransom note, which remains one of the most baffling clues in American crime history. For the first time, advancements in DNA sequencing could detect even the smallest trace of biological material from whoever handled it. Science may succeed where the system failed, John said. At the end of his statement, he took a long pause before addressing the camera directly. If you're watching this, and you know anything at all to come forward, do it for JonBenet. Don't let her story end in silence. For a brief moment, the image of a grieving father replaced the endless headlines and wild theories. It reminded the world that behind the mystery was a little girl whose life was stolen, and a father still searching for the truth, even as the years fade away. In the months following his emotional confession, John Ramsey's words rippled across the world. After nearly 3 decades of silence, his heartfelt plea reignited one of America's most haunting mysteries. For many, it was the first time they saw John not as a suspect or a figure in a media circus, but as a father who had lived with unbearable loss, guilt, and unanswered questions for 28 years. As news of his statement spread, Old investigators, crime analysts, and amateur sleuths once again pored over the case files. New documentaries began revisiting the events of Christmas 1996, this time through a more sympathetic lens. And for the first time, John Ramsey received the support that had eluded him for so long. But with renewed attention came new revelations, details that had been buried in reports or ignored during the chaos of the original investigation. Among them was a piece of evidence that stunned even seasoned detectives. A long-overlooked DNA fragment from JonBenet's clothing that did not match anyone in the Ramsey family. The sample had been dismissed decades ago as trace contamination, but modern forensic testing revealed it might hold the key to identifying a real suspect. John's persistence in pushing for this testing paid off. "For years they told me to let it go," he said in one interview. "But how do you let go of your child? How do you stop asking questions when no one else is willing to?" His determination inspired a wave of public petitions, demanding the case be reopened with fresh eyes and new technology. Yet even as he sought truth, John remained painfully aware of how much had already been lost. His wife, Patsy Ramsey, passed away in 2006 after a long battle with ovarian cancer, never seeing her name fully cleared in the public eye. "She died still carrying that weight," John admitted softly. Every day she woke up praying that people would see her as a mother, not a monster. John's later years became a mission not only to find justice but to protect his surviving children from the same shadows that haunted him and Patsy. He spent countless hours working with child advocacy groups, turning his grief into purpose. If our pain can help protect another child, then maybe JonBenet's story won't just be about tragedy, it'll be about change. Still, the emotional scars remain. John has spoken candidly about the toll the case took on his family's mental health. "It destroyed friendships, broke trust, and isolated us from the world. People thought they knew what happened in our home, but they didn't know us." Even now, whenever new reports emerge or online theories resurface, John's name trends once more. Some use his story for headlines, while others genuinely seek the truth. Yet through it all, John remains calm, his focus unshaken. "I've stopped caring about what people think of me," he said recently. "All I care about is finding out who did this to my little girl." In his final remarks during the televised interview, John's voice trembled slightly as he looked straight into the camera. "I don't expect forgiveness from the world. I just want the truth. I want to die knowing JonBenet's story ends with justice, not mystery." Those words, spoken through tears, captured the essence of nearly 3 decades of torment. A man who lost his child, his reputation, and his peace, yet never his will to fight. As the cameras faded and the interview concluded, viewers were left staring at a man who had carried the unbearable weight of grief longer than most could imagine. Whether or not the world ever learns the full truth about what happened that Christmas night in 1996, one thing is clear: John Ramsey will never stop searching. And maybe, just maybe, as technology and time continue to move forward, the truth will finally emerge from the silence, the pain, and the shadows of one of the most heartbreaking mysteries in American history.